The first phase that really gets into the meat of the design process is called schematic design, which is easily my favorite part of the entire process. This is the phase where, within a matter of weeks, we go from having nothing to having photorealistic images of a custom-made home that looks ready to be built. It's not, but from my client's perspective, it looks that way, which makes it really easy for them to understand what I'm proposing, get excited about what they're seeing, emotionally invested in the project, and give confident approvals to roll into the subsequent phases. So let's break it down and discuss what the purpose of this phase is, how I structure the deliverables, and why. So to back up a quick sec, schematic design. The word schematic is really just architect speak for conceptual or concept. With that in mind, this phase, schematic design, is all about coming up with, creating, and working toward that first 3D concept of what your home's gonna look like. By the end of the phase, we're not going to have a fully engineered working building. We're aiming to have you excited about a potential direction that we're going to then develop further in subsequent phases. And this is something different architects will handle differently. A lot of architects will primarily use traditional 2D floor plans as the main type of drawing or deliverable that you'd be reviewing and discussing. Maybe by the end of the phase, you get some rough sketches or 3D massing diagrams showing how those 2D plans might translate into 3D. But they're often loose and maybe not fully worked out yet, pushing some of that development into later phases. That works for some, but it potentially leaves a lot of room for you to misinterpret these early drawings, which could ultimately lead to missed expectations, major design revisions, and generally unhappy clients, which I prefer to minimize. So that's not really how I approach this phase. Most of my clients aren't in the building industry. They haven't been trained to read these abstract 2D floor plans, so in my opinion, it's not really their fault if they misinterpret what they're presented in 2D. But they are liking these beautifully photographed completed homes on Instagram and pinning them on Pinterest. That's the medium that my clients understand and how they're expressing their interests to me. So in my studio, I try to get you reviewing beautifully photographed images, or renderings as they're called in the industry, of your concept as soon as possible. So what does that look like in practice? Well, first, I always do start with an initial schematic 2D floor plan concept. This is aimed solely at getting the broad strokes of the design on paper and making sure we're accounting for all the functions of the home. This is always a loose floor plan, subject to change as we come up with the exterior design, but we want to see the overall size and make sure that the functions of the home discussed during pre-design all actually fit on the lot. It's the best time to really make big changes if you want to increase or decrease square footage or radically reconfigure where things go. Once you've given the approval that we've accounted for what you need, we do an exercise examining a series of case study images of completed designs you've collected or that I've flagged that I think you might like. We sort of cherry pick design elements and use that to come up with an architectural language unique to your project. Maybe you like the color of stone in one image with the wood color in another, adjacent to some screening element from a different design. This discussion forms the basis of the initial design elements that I'll try to blend into your unique lot with your unique goals. With the basic floor plan and case study discussion behind us, I dive straight into creating those beautiful renderings of what the concept looks like in 3D to continue our discussion. I have some pretty advanced 3D modeling software that lets me take those 2D floor plans we've been reviewing and create an exact 3D model of that design. There's nothing lost in translation or open to interpretation. Ultimately, when you're reviewing the completed renderings, you're reviewing exactly what those 2D floor plans represent. And if you like and approve what the images are showing you, that's pretty much what you're going to get when the project is built 2 years from now. And if there's something that you don't like, I can tweak the design and give you an updated set of images to review. The renderings become the primary tool that we use to discuss the design intent of your home. Primarily because they're so clear, they force us to examine the design through a realistic perspective with real materials, landscape, lighting, furniture, all that essentially mirror exactly what could be built if you like it. Instead of seeking your approval via sort of an abstract 2D diagram that you're not used to seeing, we're using a visual medium that all my clients really understand. Nothing's left to the imagination, which again helps reduce the likelihood that I end up with unhappy clients down the road. I don't deem this schematic design phase complete. We do not move on in the project until you're happy with the state of those renderings. And once you fall in love with them, even though it may look like it's ready to be built, there's actually a whole lot of refinement that still needs to happen, and that is what the next phases in the process are for. Feel free to describe if you are interested in watching the next video in the series, which is all about how I handle design development in my practice. Cheers.